All right. Good evening, everybody. So welcome to our second P, pricing. The recorded lecture, lecture 6, was product. So after we've done this one, we'll be halfway through our 4 Ps, and we're kind of in the home stretch for content for this course as well. So today we're going to talk about pricing basics in the first half. And then we're going to talk about advanced pricing, or kind of more subtle ways that you can price in the second half. And we'll also talk about the survey responses there. So pricing is it has like kind of an interesting place in marketing. You'd think that it would be really important and that we could do it really, really well. That's actually not quite true. In fact, often pricing takes really a backseat in marketing relative to things like promotion and product design. So today I'm going to talk about kind of sort of some of the traditional ways of pricing, and then kind of some of the tools that we're using more and more from economics. That'll be in kind of the pricing basics. And then in the second half, kind of even more sort of varieties of pricing. So what is the price? It's the amount of money that you're charging as a company for a product or a service, or for your market offering. And really what they are is an instrument used by the firm to collect value from consumers in exchange for the value that the firm is providing to consumers. So when we think about how do firms choose prices, we typically think about them trying to maximize profits. But that doesn't necessarily mean maximizing the current profits. As we know, repeat customers are really important. So a company should be kind of thinking not just about today's profits, but about all of the future profits that it might be earning. So we have kind of a more general sense of profit as being achieved in the long term by setting the price optimally for the long term, right? Essentially, we want to maximize the future stream of profits across all of your market offerings, and not just kind of today's profit from a particular product. So let's kind of start things out with a more informal discussion. So if you're a firm and you're thinking about setting prices, what factors should you consider? What should go into that decision on how to set prices well? So let's look at the price of something that if you drive a car, you're going to be paying fairly close attention to, price of gasoline in Canada. And here we see, a nice blast from the past when in, 2000, the price of gasoline was about like 40 cents a liter. And it's kind of been going up since then, but it bounces around quite a bit. So let me ask you guys, why do you think the price of gasoline is moving in this way, right? It's going up, but why does it have all these wiggles? Yeah, it's very high right now. It's off the y-axis. Why do we have all these wiggles in the price of gasoline? Supply and demand. Okay, so demand for gasoline is, a lot of it is from drivers, right? Drivers of cars, and then also people who use planes, right? So is the demand for gasoline that variable from kind of week to week that it jumps up and jumps down like that? Relative supply and demand, time to produce, international trade. So there's kind of a sense here that, yeah, maybe there's like a global market for gasoline, and that has something to do with the prices being as they are. Value of the dollar, yeah. So when we think about why is the price of gas fluctuating so much, demand from drivers is pretty stable, right? You kind of maybe in the summer it goes up and then in the winter it goes down, but it's pretty stable over time. So why is the price changing so much? So here's maybe a hint. Here we have the price of crude oil, right? Which is the primary input into gasoline, right? You get crude oil from the ground, you refine it and turn it into gasoline, right? So we see oil from the ground, crude oil, basically mimics the price of gasoline, or rather the other way around, right? Gasoline mimics the price of crude, right? Crude is the main cost of making gasoline, buying crude. So the price of gasoline really reflects its price of, or its cost of the input, right? So that's one thing, right? Costs. Here's a very different product. Alexander asks, why is crude oil fluctuating? That's a great question, which a lot of people spend a lot of time analyzing. So I kind of dodged it by saying we're just looking at gasoline, and here crude is the input into gasoline. Why does crude oil fluctuate? Crude oil is not just an input into gasoline. It's also kind of an investment that people make, right? People buy futures, they sell futures. So it's kind of a traded commodity. So you can think of, the price of crude often reflects the same features as like the stock market, right? And we see stocks wiggle around quite a bit as well. All right, so that's gasoline. Price reflects the cost of the input. Here's another product. It's a nice product. You can name a star at starregistration.com. And on the left, we have a standard star, which you can name for $29.90. And on the right, you have a binary star, which you can name for $79.90. So here's our kind of two varieties of star. Yeah, 90, not 99. Why not 99? Probably because they're trying to signal the immense value of this thing that you're buying. So why is a binary star so much more expensive than a regular star? Could reflect rarity. Okay, yeah, so maybe supply factors. There's just fewer of them. So maybe that kind of reflects people are willing to pay more for something that's rare. It's further away. Targeting towards a pair of people, the emotional tie. Yeah, so if you're buying a star, odds are you're doing it as a gift. And if you're doing it as a gift, it's probably for someone. So, if you're buying it for someone you love or someone you like, then it's more fun to have it be a binary star, right? More marketable to couples, right? Actually, so it's kind of reflecting demand features. If you look out in the universe, apparently binary stars are much less rare. They're actually much more prevalent. So about 80% of stars apparently are binary stars out there in the universe. So this definitely reflects demand features, right? People value it more because maybe it's worth more as a gift if you're buying it for a couple. Right? All right. You guys aren't a big fan of this star buying, star selling scheme. All right, here's another one, Coca-Cola. Temperature sensitive vending machine. So Coca-Cola, from this report, says they've quietly begun testing a vending machine that can automatically raise prices for its drinks in hot weather through a temperature sensor and a computer chip. So why would that be a good idea? What does that reflect? Why would they want to raise the price when it's hot? Higher demand, right? So consumer perceived value, just like with the star, is higher. And in this case, it's higher based on context. If it's hot, then you value it more, right? Demand goes up. So that's why you would charge a higher price for a Coke in hot weather. We don't see these machines anywhere, right? I've never seen a machine like this that charges a higher price for Coke in hot weather. Why not? Backlash. What does that mean, backlash? Ethically. So there's something kind of ethically weird about it, right? If it's hot, people want to drink more, but it's because they, really need a drink, right? So maybe it feels somehow unfair to charge a higher price for a Coke when it's hot, when people really need it, right? So we had a little experience of that in the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, price gouging almost. So provinces promise to crack down on pandemic price gouging. So the idea is that maybe prices of necessities go way up because firms just can charge more because people want paper towels and toilet paper and sanitizer more when they're trying to stock up, when they're worried they might run out, right? So this idea of when demand is high, raising the prices somehow feels unfair is something, yeah, we actually have laws against, right? Because people would prefer something to be fairly priced. But we also have this, right? Surge pricing. This we allow, right? This exists. So what's the difference between surge pricing and price gouging, if there is a difference? Why do we think that one is fair and one is unfair and ethically questionable? Could be that these things are necessities, true, perhaps. Price gouging is done based on demand and surge pricing is done based on limited supply, like less drivers. Yeah, so with surge pricing, we kind of get the sense that by increasing the price, you get more and more drivers on the road, which can reduce the wait time, right? So trying to alleviate those issues of limited supply and create a more quality experience by reducing the wait time. So in that sense, when we think about raising prices just because you can, that's perceived as unfair and there's a backlash, right? Versus raising prices to alleviate supply problems like Uber does versus, what Coke would be doing, that's perceived as kind of more fair in the sense it's giving you a higher quality experience, but you do have to pay more, right? And again, where the quality is, it's trying to reduce the wait time, get more drivers on the road. When we look at essential supplies, maybe one of the reasons why the price gouging hasn't been put into place is because supply chain issues mean the costs of these things have gone up for companies, right? Maybe not in the very beginning of 2020, but by the end, it cost a lot more to source a lot of these products. Consumers are less likely to say something's unfair if it's raised for cost reasons, if it's raised for or kind of supply reasons. If it's raised for demand reasons, people have a backlash, okay? So the perception of fairness also plays a role. All right, last bit. Here we have the price of a particular pharmaceutical, Lipitor, from 2010 to 2014. We see it's holding fairly steady, around like $2.50, $3, and then it plummets in 2013. So they lowered their price by 75 to 80%, but why? Why did their price change so dramatically? Mohammed says maybe some side effects became apparent. That would decrease the perceived value. That would decrease the price. Possible. It's not what happened here. They recouped their R&D costs. Why would they lower the price though? Once they've recouped those costs, then it's all profit. So why lower the price just because you've already made your money back? Why not keep making more money? Yeah, Jonathan says another company produced a very similar product. Yeah, so it does have to do with the R&D, but the patent expired on the product. A generic entered. The generic was priced really low, and Lipitor cut their price to compete. So summarizing kind of some of these things, what are the relevant factors for pricing? Costs, consumer perceived value, behavioral factors, which go into that perceived value, including things like perceptions of fairness and price gouging, and competition, right? Who are your competitors? What prices are they charging? So these are a lot of different features to try to incorporate in pricing. So one way to do pricing well is using microeconomic tools. In a systematic way, we can use models from microeconomics to compute kind of the exact price that maximizes your profit in very general settings. And I'm going to show you how we can do that in a simplified way in a few slides. You need a demand curve and you need a marginal cost curve. What are these two objects? The demand curve gives you the quantity that people are willing to buy of your product as a function of prices and other stuff, right? Like people's income, the prices of your competitors' products, the attributes of the good, and maybe things like context, right? Is it a hot day or not, right? Like with Coke. The marginal cost curve is how much does it cost you as a company to produce an additional unit. So if we want to do pricing really well, really precisely, we need these two things. Quantity is a function of price and the marginal cost curve. But this is kind of hard to do. So what have we typically done when we're setting prices? Basically, two very simplistic approaches. Who are your competitors? What prices are they charging? If they're charging that price, it must be for a good reason. Let's imitate them, right? So if your main competitor charges X dollars and you offer similar value, charge something similar to X dollars, right? That's one way. Second way, cost plus a fixed margin, right? If your costs are Y dollars to make a unit of your product or to serve one person, charge Y dollars times M, right? Where M is some scaling factor greater than 1, right? So if you want a 100% markup, M would be equal to 2, right? So you charge Y dollars times 2, so twice what it costs you to make the product, okay? There's no real theory behind either of these, why you would do it this way. It's just that it's very straightforward to do, and pricing correctly is quite hard to do, okay? So these are kind of the two basics. This is kind of, if you choose to do any kind of, when you do choose to set prices in your project, these are the kind of pricing strategies I would expect you to do, kind of one or the other. Probably imitating competitors is where you should start. Now, let's say you have more data about people's demand curve, then you can kind of get more serious and pick an exact price that will supposedly maximize profits. So let's walk through what that kind of analysis would look like. Suppose we have two consumers. We have consumer A and B. They differ in their willingness to pay, which is the maximum price they would willingly pay for one unit of the product. You can kind of think of that as consumer perceived value, right? This is the value that I would ascribe to the product, but it's like the benefits side, right? Consumer perceived value, we often think of as benefits minus costs. It's kind of a net number. This is just pure benefits. What's the maximum price I would pay for one unit of the product? That's my willingness to pay. That's how much value I get from it. So let's say our two consumers look like this. A values it a little bit more highly than B. These two consumers together kind of form a demand curve, right? So from the firm's perspective, we know that the first unit, we could sell it for $6 to the first consumer, consumer A. And our second unit, we could sell it for $4 to consumer B. But if we're only picking one price, then if we want to sell 2 units, we have to reduce it to 4, right? If all we have is the ability to set one price, then we're either charging $6 and just selling to A, or we're charging $4, at which point B would be willing to buy, but we're selling to both A and B, okay? So these are kind of the two possibilities that we need to consider for what price we want to set. Now I said we also need the marginal cost curve. So in this course, we'll only be thinking about flat marginal cost curves. In this case, we have an instance where the firm is spending $3 to make one unit of the product. So forget that per hour thing. Just think $3 to make one unit of the product. So agent asks, what about in between? So I'm going to assume you mean like in between $6 and $4. Like, why not charge a price in there? If you charge $5, then consumer 1 will buy because their willingness to pay is bigger than 5. So you'll sell one unit at $5, but consumer B will not buy because the price is still above their willingness to pay. So by reducing the price below 6, really all that you've done is you're selling it for less to consumer A. So you're making less money overall, right? Similarly, you could charge less than $4, but at $4, both of them are already buying anyway. So in this course, we're dealing with flat marginal cost curve, so $3 for every additional unit to produce. So we have these two ingredients, and I claimed that we can use those to figure out the optimal price. So here I've combined them on the same graph. On the y-axis, we still have price, and I've noted $3, the marginal cost with this blue line, $4, the willingness to pay of consumer B, $6, the willingness to pay of consumer A. So really, there's two prices we need to consider, $6 and just sell to A, or $4 and sell to both A and B. So we want to sell as long as the marginal revenue from the next unit exceeds or equals the marginal cost. So the extra money we get from selling that next unit should cover our costs. If it's not, then we are selling too many and we should pull back and sell to consumers who value it more. So in this instance, what should we do? Should we charge $6 and sell it just to consumer A, or should we charge $4 and sell it to both A and B? What do you guys think? So if we sell 4 units, or if we sell at $4, that means we're selling 2 units, right? And it costs us only $3 to make this product. So selling at 4 means we'll make a profit on each one, right? But is it the most profit we can make? So the answer is no. We're actually only going to sell to consumer A here, and we're going to charge a price of $6. So why is that the case? It's kind of, it's not totally intuitive, but let's walk through it. If you sell to just A, you're going to sell 1 unit and you'll sell it at $6, right? So your marginal revenue is 6. You've made $6, 6 additional dollars, and it only costs you $3 to make. Now, if you sell to B, what happens? You need to drop the price. So you drop it from 6 to 2 or 6 to 4, right? What that means is my total revenue has gone up. Now I'm selling 2 units at $4. So that's $8 total that I'm making. But before I was making $6. So I've gained $4 from selling to consumer B, but I've lost $2 on consumer A, right? I could have sold it to them for 6, but now I'm only selling it to them for 4. So by going down to $4, I've kind of lost 2 on A, but I've gained 4 on B, right? So that's where we have a marginal revenue value of only $2. Selling to B and A means I've only gained an additional $2, right? My total revenue went from 6 to 8. So that marginal revenue was only 2. And that's less than the marginal cost, right? We gained an additional $2, and it cost us $3 to make that additional unit. So no good. We actually don't make that second unit. Right. The idea again is that when we want to sell to more people, we need to drop the price. And that means that we're losing revenue from the people who were paying that higher price initially. Okay. So that's optimal pricing if you have this kind of set of consumer valuations in your marginal cost curve. Right. So demand curves are very useful tools for setting prices since they can help capture that consumer perceived value. And we saw a few slides back talking about research that typically when you do data analysis, you may want to try to create a demand curve by running experiments and seeing how consumers respond. But unless you're a giant company running experiments, you don't really have the capacity to create a demand curve. So is there any way to actually incorporate those insights with the more simple approach? So there is. We can do approximately optimal pricing with the following formula. So if we have a demand curve and we're trying to maximize profit with respect to price P, and our marginal cost per unit is C dollars, then the formula that gives the optimal price is this one. P, price minus cost C divided by price is equal to 1 over big E. And what is big E? It's the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so P is the price, and we'll solve for that. C is the marginal cost, which we should have. We should know that because we're the firm and we have a good sense of what our costs are. And then E, the elasticity, is the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price, negative. Okay, so this elasticity, basically, it's a measure of how responsive quantity sold would be to the price if I decided to change it. So in order to do this, in order to apply this formula, we need to be able to recover the elasticity. Instead of kind of figuring out the whole demand curve, now we've kind of reduced it to, I just need to know what's the price elasticity of demand, this percent change in quantity divided by percent change in price, kind of near where I'm thinking of setting the price. How do you figure out E? You can survey people, or you can run kind of a much simpler experiment. So let's take a look at an example of kind of applying this formula. So we have the Apple Watch, and suppose we know that the marginal cost to make this watch is $100. So C is equal to 100. And we know that Apple is currently charging, say, $300 for the watch. Apple runs a survey, and what this survey says is that if the price were raised from 300 to 350, then the quantity purchased would decrease from 4 million to 3 million. Okay, so that's the survey that they ran. Like, what if we increase the price? How would the quantity change? Okay. So the question is, what price should Apple charge using the insights from this approximately optimal pricing formula? So here's how we apply it using the data that we're given. This is the formula that we want to use up here in the top, right? This thing right here. And what we need is the elasticity, because we have C, and we're trying to figure out now what should be the optimal P, right? Currently it's at 300, or sorry, currently it's at 300, but is that optimal? So for the elasticity, we need these two quantities, the percent change in quantity and the percent change in price, okay? So for the percent change in quantity, well, we know how to compute the percent change in something, right? If you want to know, like if a number has changed, like something's gone from 80 to 90, and you want to say, what's the percent increase? You take the new value, 90, minus the old value, 80, you divide it by 80, and you multiply by 100, right? That'll give you the percent change in something. So from the survey that Apple ran, we observe Q new and Q old, right? And we also observe for prices, P new and P old, right? When I say new and old you should think of as like our starting value, right? So Q old, what's that? We're starting from $300. And so the quantity purchased would decrease from $4 million from 4 million to 3 million. So our Q old, our starting Q is 4 million, and our Q new, what happens after we do this change, is 3 million, right? So Q new minus Q old divided by Q old, we have 3 minus 4 divided by 4. That's just -1 over 4 times 100, so that's going to be -25%. So the quantity would fall by 25% if we were to raise the price as we kind of outlined. And what is that price change in percentages? it's P new minus P old divided by P old. So 350, our new considered price, 350 minus 300, the price we're starting at, divided by 300. And that's going to be 100 times 1 over 6, which is 16.6%. So when we take this ratio, which is the elasticity, we end up with a number 1.5. Right, 25 divided by 16.6. What does that number mean? That number is, if I increase prices by 1%, quantity is going to fall by 1.5%. That's what the elasticity says. It captures people's responsiveness to a price increase. The bigger is the elasticity, right? The larger is that number. That means people are more sensitive to a price increase, right? The same 1% increase in price would lead to a larger percent change in quantity. Okay, so that's the elasticity number. And when we look at how it lives in the formula, P minus C over P equals 1 over the elasticity, as the elasticity goes up and up, you can see that that gap P minus C is going to have to shrink, right? 1 over E, right? As E goes up, 1 over E goes down, right? It's a number that gets closer and closer to 0. P minus C, that's kind of like our markup, right? That's the difference between the price we want to charge and what it costs to make. So as 1 over E goes towards 0, then in order for the left-hand side to also be equal to that low number, P minus C needs to shrink. Bigger elasticity, more price-sensitive consumers is going to lead to a smaller markup, right? A smaller price relative to the cost. And so with the elasticity, we can solve explicitly for what the optimal price should be, right? So we start from P minus C over P equals 1 over the elasticity. We rearrange to solve for price. And then we plug in the numbers that we have and that we have calculated. And we'll find that price should be equal to 300. So we run this survey. And what it tells us is actually the optimal price is 300. Given how sensitive people are, given that they would respond in this way with this elasticity to a price increase, P equals 300 is the best we can do. So I'll pause here. If there's any questions, feel free to type in chat, or if you want to speak up, that's good too.
So the E for every company would be different, right? Or for every product would be different.
Correct.
It has to be, you have to find it through research.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and not just every product, but potentially the same product after something changes. So here, this example, I'll leave for you guys as an exercise, but let's say, Samsung Gear is introduced. Apple runs another survey, and this one says that actually if they increase the price from 300 to 350, quantity purchased would decrease from 3 million to 1.5 million. Okay, so now people are more sensitive, right? Same price increase, bigger drop in quantity. That kind of makes sense, right? There's a competitor in the picture now, so Apple can't price as aggressively. But with this higher elasticity, what's their optimal price, right? Is it still 300, or should they change it based on this sensitivity? Yeah, Athena?
In the upcoming test, would you ask us to find anything other than the new optimal price? So should we know how to rearrange the formula in different ways to find certain things?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you might need to kind of solve for a different quantity. Yeah, Angelica?
The 1.5 in elasticity, is that like, you said if you increase price by 1%, quantity will decrease by 1.5 as a multiplier, or 1.5%?
1.5%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so yeah, I'll leave that for you guys to do. So let's look at some other pricing strategies. So here's one that we see all the time, right? We see coupons. Right, on the left, we have coupon for olive oil. On the right, we have a coupon for toothpaste. So what's the point of a coupon? Why do stores use coupons so much? Encourage you to buy, maybe target people who like coupons, attract customers. So attract customers that would not normally spend money there. So the idea maybe is that there's some, Puya says, entice those with the lower willingness to pay. So perhaps you guys have brought up a lot of good reasons. This one about hoping that people buy the rest of their items in the store if there's a really good deal on one particular item is a good one. In general, it could be to induce trials, could be to sort of create a sense of urgency, but this idea that there's people out there who clip coupons, that there's kind of a group of people whose willingness to pay is lower, and that maybe these coupons are somehow just for them, right? So let's see why coupons might be attractive. So, our earlier example, A's willingness to pay is $6, B's willingness to pay is $4. And consumer B did not buy in our original scenario. We charged a price of $6 and only A purchased. We could sell to B. If we could sell just to B for $4 and still keep our $6 from A, that's what we would like to do. Because then, we can still make $1 by selling to B at their willingness to pay. So how do we do that? We can give them a coupon, right? So $2 off coupon, in which case they would be buying at an effective price of $4, but you keep the shelf price at $6. And your total profits would increase, right? You'd be making an additional $1. How do you get the coupon just to consumer B though, right? Would the consumer switch to get the discount? So how do you get it just to consumer B? There has to be something that consumer A is somehow not willing to look for coupons, that somehow the willingness to pay has to be correlated with patience or coupon clipping behavior. And the fact that we see coupons out there in the wild kind of suggests that's true, that people who have a high willingness to pay are somehow more impatient. They would like to save that $2 just as much as anyone, but they're not willing to go looking for a coupon, right? So the fact that there's kind of this correlation between maybe willingness to pay and your willingness to look for a coupon is kind of what helps drive this couponing behavior. So it's an example of price discrimination, different prices for different customers, but for the same product, right? And the price charged varies, but not because of different costs, right? That's kind of a key feature here. Price discrimination is changing the price for different consumers based on their willingnesses to pay. To successfully price discriminate, you need to be able to segment the market. So identify that there's different groups with different willingnesses to pay, and then also be able to sell to those different segments at different prices. So there's 3 kinds of price discrimination: perfect, which is first degree price discrimination; quantity discounts, second degree price discrimination; and then screening, which is third degree price discrimination. Okay. And that's, we'll come back to coupons with third degree price discrimination. Perfect price discrimination is kind of a theoretical possibility, but not something we see very often. What is it? It's each consumer being charged their full willingness to pay for the product. This extracts maximum value from the consumer for the firm, but the firm must be able to observe or learn each consumer's willingness to pay, must be able to set a different price for each consumer. And importantly, you've got to be able to prevent resale, right? Because if I'm a consumer and I can buy it really, really cheaply because my willingness to pay is low, I could turn around and sell it for a little bit more to someone with a higher willingness to pay, and I would undercut the firm. right? So you need to be able to prevent resale, right? So perfect price discrimination is kind of something that we maybe observe more and more online, because with digital products, it's a lot easier to prevent resale than with physical products. You also see kind of this sort of price discrimination more with services, right? Because there's no way to resell a service, right? But rarely achieved. You know, we kind of see maybe if people are haggling or buying a used car, if the salesperson is very skilled, potentially they can extract the full willingness to pay. You know, some online services try to get people to signal their full willingness to pay, like Priceline. Are discounts to specific customers considered price discrimination? I would say yes. So if it's like, you know, a demographic or something like that, definitely, right? Like older people getting a cheaper ticket. If it's a consumer who's raising a fuss or who's loyal, that's still segmentation based on behavioral factors. So still price discrimination. As long as the segments are there and they're observable and you're charging different prices for the same products. So attempts to perfectly price discriminate don't often work. Here's something that works that we see all the time: second degree price discrimination. The larger your purchase, so the more quantity you buy, the better price you receive per unit, right? So you see this with household goods all the time. Paper towels, if you want to buy 6, that's $10. If you want to buy 12, that's $16. Yeah, Costco, you get more for your dollar, cheaper price per unit. You have to be able to pay a bunch up front, but you recoup the savings over time. We kind of think this is mostly with consumer goods, but actually it's everywhere. So here's Wealthsimple. They're a company that you can put your money in and invest. This is their managed investments account. And if you give them less than $100,000, they'll be charging you 0.5% every year to manage your money. But if you give them more than $100,000, they'll only charge you 0.4%. So banking, as with household goods, is cheaper the more money you have to spend. Last example is third degree price discrimination. So this is also called screening, meaning we charge different prices for different consumer segments who differ in their willingness to pay for the product. So we divide the market into a few groups, right? We don't say everyone gets their own price. We say these observable segments each get their own price, right? And observable in the sense that the firm can tell who is who at the point of purchase, right? There's two cases to consider though. You know, when those segments are observable, like lower prices for children or for the elderly or for student rates, you can also think about like online discounts versus on-site prices. So these are segments like your age and what channel you're using to buy the product that are observable, right? I can see if you're accessing through your computer versus you're coming to me to buy it in person. And I can see if you're old based on your ID, right? So that's on the right. Yeah, we have different age groups paying different amounts to go up the CN Tower. And then we also have buying online, you can save money there, right? So you can identify those two segments, and the Toronto kind of tourism, whoever runs the CN Tower has identified those segments and is segmenting and price discriminating. But what about when different segments are unobservable? A lot of our segments are unobservable, right? Like your preferences, your tastes. If I haven't gathered data on your tastes yet, then I don't know what they are. And I can't observe kind of what your preference, what your willingness to pay for any given product will be, right? And we also have coupons, right? Some people are different just because they have a lower willingness to pay. and we would like to sell to them at their lower price and still sell to the other guys at the higher price, but we can't observe, right? We can't just ask them, hey, what's your willingness to pay? Everyone's going to say, that's really low. Like, you should give it to me for a low price, right? So how do you actually get third degree price discrimination going when you can't observe the segments, right? What you need to be able to do is, like with the couponing example, you need to capitalize on a correlation between willingness to pay and some other characteristic. So you can try to like separate the market out so that different segments actually pay different prices, right? Like for couponing, the other characteristic was kind of this patience or willingness to look through the flyers, right? How much time do you have available, right? So because people with a high willingness to pay tend not to have that time available, couponing works. We can separate out these two different groups with different willingnesses to pay based on this kind of patience, right? Sales can serve many functions, like periodic sales, like what we see at the grocery store when the sticker price goes down. They can serve many functions, but one function they also serve is a type of screening, right? So they can do these things, reduce inventories, get people to try something out, but they can price discriminate, right? So it's incomplete screening, and we have unobservable segments. And the different segments are people who stockpile and people who don't, right? Could potentially be people who have room to stockpile, like their houses are big, and some people don't, right? So price sensitive consumers, the ones with low willingness to pay, tend to be ones who kind of can stockpile more, right? So what you do is periodically you have a sale, and the people who have a big stockpile, a big inventory of toothpaste, they've been kind of using it up. And then when there's a sale, they replenish their inventory, right? They have the room to store 10 toothpastes, so they buy 10 toothpastes at a time. And then they wait for the next sale. Meanwhile, people who don't have that kind of stockpiling ability, or they don't have the patience to wait, they're just going to buy it at the regular price whenever they need it, right? So you're getting that willingness to pay correlation with kind of that patience or stockpiling feature again, right? So you can kind of see that sales in a way are almost like complementary, right? For sales, people who have a big house who are able to stockpile, these are maybe potentially high income people, not the kind of people we think are doing couponing. But there's still these people out there who have a low willingness to pay, right? But they don't have time to coupon. What they do have time for is stockpiling, right? And they'll do that. So we can get them too. All right, so this is a good place to break. So let's take 10 minutes. It's 5:58, so we'll resume at 6:08, and I'll stay in chat. All right, let's get back to it. So we left off with price discrimination. Now let's take a look at kind of more sophisticated pricing approaches. So up till now, we've basically thought about single product pricing. So pricing one product could be different prices to different people, but it's just one product setting that one price at a single moment in time. So now we'll think about maybe some considerations that you face if you're trying to price dynamically, if you're trying to do multi-product pricing, or if you're setting multiple prices to basically access the product. So multi-part pricing. So what is dynamic pricing? So we often see this with new products. So firms offering a new product typically enter the market with kind of a different starting price than the price the firm intends to or eventually uses for the product after it's been on the market for a while. So the price is tied to the life cycle. When it's first introduced, it looks different than, a year or 2 or 10 later on. There's two approaches that we focus on and that I asked you guys to look into in the survey. So price skimming and then penetration pricing. So here we see prices of Intel microchips in kind of like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. This would look fairly similar if we kind of brought this up to the present day. But each line here is a different product. It's a different microprocessor. And we see that they all follow a very similar pattern. They start high, and then over time, they decrease, right? In later years, we can see that that decrease is incredibly sharp and fast, right? So, the Pentium 4, when it was introduced, is $600. And basically a year later, it's $200, right? So an incredible price drop over a very short amount of time. And this is an example of price skimming, where we start high and then we cut the price, right? Now, what would be an example of penetration pricing? So Megabus is a company that kind of serves bus routes between different Canadian cities. They also operate in the US. And so in 2008, when they expanded to Canada, they started off with very, very low prices for some routes. So for instance, between Toronto and Montreal, you could get a ticket for $1. By 2016, the prices had increased quite a bit. By 2021, they're even higher. So the penetration pricing pattern is to start low when your product's introduced and then go higher and higher over time until maybe you reach some final level. So new product pricing strategies, when you price skim, you start high and you decrease over time. And what happens is you're kind of moving down the experience curve. So this is one justification why it might make sense to price skim, because as you make more and more, the cost of it gets lower and lower, right? That's what we mean by moving down the experience curve. The price decreases as we make more. We get better at making it, right? The other reason you might want to price skim is not a cost side one, but it's a demand side one. And it's what's known as inter-temporal price discrimination. So we've heard price discrimination before the break. Inter-temporal means across time, right? At different moments in time. So what is inter-temporal price discrimination? It's basically setting different prices at different moments in time in order to capture the willingness to pay of different people, different unique segments. And these segments are unobserved. Some have high willingness to pay and some have low, but that unobserved willingness to pay is correlated with patience. If we have a lot of people who are very willing to pay and they're impatient, they want to get their hands on the new product, then we can kind of sell to them at that high price. And then if there's people who are more patient, they kind of are happy to wait then we'll sell to them later at a lower price, right? We can also think, yeah, there's just, there's people who have a ton of interest in the product. Maybe they're enthusiasts for the technology. They have very high willingness to pay. And again, kind of they're impatient. Waiting for them is somehow painful, more costly. So they choose not to wait, right? But again, it's kind of this idea of they must be more impatient in some way. Otherwise, why not just wait a year and get it for $200 instead of $600? Penetration pricing, we start low and then we increase over time. So one objective here might be to induce diffusion or adoption and gain market share. Okay, so with this, we're kind of thinking somehow it's a good idea to gain market share all on its own, right? Right. We see a ton of apps that kind of operate like this, right? They price in an extremely aggressive way when the app first comes out, and their main objective is to gain market share. That's what will satisfy their venture capitalist funders. That's what kind of people accept as a valid thing to do. But kind of what's the benefit of just gaining market share, right? Usually we think you make more profit, right? You're selling to more people, you're making more money. But here we're gaining market share even though we're losing money on every user, like Spotify, right? Spotify loses money on all of its users, but they still have huge market share. And we think that that's somehow good, or kind of a good strategy going forward. The idea behind that is that oftentimes a product becomes more valuable to its users the more people there are using it, right? So think about a social network, right? A social network is more valuable to you the more of your friends who are on it, right? So the more people using it, the more you're willing to pay to use it, right? That's the sense in which market share can be good all on its own, right? So maybe that's true for Spotify. The bigger they are, kind of the more people you see your friends are listening on it, the more valuable it'll be to you. You won't want to leave. And so over time, you can raise the price, because as more and more people use it, the willingness to pay of everyone goes up, right? That's the sense in which penetration pricing makes sense, even if you're making a loss in the beginning. You can also try to use it to deter competitors from entering the market, right? So by pricing extremely low, you might be able to outlast a competitor who can't price that low, who can't basically just burn their money trying to pursue the market share. Okay. So here's our two kinds of dynamic pricing strategies, high to low and low to high. And now let's go to the survey and see what you guys said for Tesla. So they have a new technology for fast charging. And this is like a hypothetical technology. It's faster than anything they currently have. It needs a new kind of battery to work, and it needs to be paired with a fast charging station. Okay, and they're deploying this technology in a new car called the Model Z. What type of pricing should Tesla engage in for the Model Z? And we just had two options this week. Market skimming was overwhelmingly popular, but we also had some market penetration. So let's start with the market skimming crowd. Let's see. Is Kartika here?
Hi, Professor.
Hi. So would you mind sharing why you chose market skimming for this Tesla car?
So I put market skimming because Tesla is actually a luxury car. I think it's not something that everyone invests in because it's very expensive. As you mentioned before in the previous slide, I think consumers who are willing to pay high price are comparatively impatient. They don't want to wait until the price gets lowered, because there might be a lot of consumers who are curious to try out this new feature in the Tesla cars. So I think it might be better for Tesla to start out the price high and then see how consumers are like responding to it, and then according to that they can go lower.
Okay, cool. So your sense is that there is this group of consumers out there who are maybe very willing to pay, and they're impatient, kind of like tech enthusiast style. And there's enough of them out there that market skimming makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Kartika. So I see a hand up, Amisha.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Professor. I went with market skimming because I felt like I kind of compared Tesla to a high-end company. Tesla's cars are really expensive, so it kind of makes sense for the accessories to be expensive as well. So like the chargers being expensive. I think since this is a newer technology, there's not a lot of competitors in the market as of now. So they can start with a really high price, and Tesla car owners are already investing so much, they wouldn't mind investing a bit more in the fast chargers. And I feel like in the next few years or decades, the number of completely fully battery operated vehicles is going to increase, which means that there will be more competitors in the market. So, and that's when they're going to lower the price so that the sales are still up. And yeah, that's basically it. The firm will lower the price to attract like more people. So, which is why I chose market skimming.
Okay, cool. So now it's not just a matter of like the demand and the willingness to pay segmentation. It's also a matter of competition. Right now, Tesla is mostly alone, although there's more and more. So they should charge a high price while they're able to kind of use their monopoly position, and then the price will kind of lower over time. All right, quick aside, interesting tidbit about Tesla. Is anyone interested in investing? Is anyone following the Tesla stock price? $1 trillion valuation. Yeah. How does that compare to other car companies, that $1 trillion valuation? Yeah, worth more than every other automobile company combined, right? So what does that suggest about investors' expectations about Tesla's ability to make a profit? Because right now, Tesla's profit, you guys probably know this, their profit is so small that to recoup basically at kind of like a 5% rate, if they were kind of paying it out as dividends, to recoup those initial investment costs, like of you buying the stock, it would take a very, very long time for you to earn enough in dividends from the revenue they earn right now. So the expectation is they're going to be making a ton of money in the future. But market skimming suggests they're going to be charging a much lower price in the future, right? So why, maybe someone who's got skin in the game on Tesla, why are they going to be so insanely profitable in the future so that they would be worth this $1 trillion valuation? Yeah, Shoaib?
Well, just in their, I guess, if you look at them as an auto manufacturer, like the whole market cap wouldn't be justified. It's also partially pricing in the growth of their other segments that they're playing in. But specifically for, I guess, like their automotive sector, I chose like market penetration pricing just because I think right now, the need for EVs is to increase the overall market adoption for EVs. Mm-hmm. So I think with market penetration pricing, you can kind of lock in some consumers into your brand. And because it mentions in the question that that fast charging stations are also required, so you can kind of like lock them into your ecosystem in a sense, right? Because they do have like a proprietary charging system. So if you like price your cars really low, you can get a large percentage of the market share. And basically just gradually increase the price of charging, and I guess the cars as well.
Awesome. I think that's a great answer for market penetration pricing, right? The ecosystem, you want to get people using your standard, your technology standard. And so if you're able to get a big market share, that means your standard will be the most widely adopted, right? And it'll be kind of the default one that people have to use. Now, there could be other standards out there, but if all the fast charging stations across North America all use the Tesla standard, then it's going to be a lot more valuable for you considering your next electric vehicle to buy a Tesla, because it'll be easier for you to charge it, right? So market penetration here is, there's a sense in which increasing market share kind of has this network effect, right? Because of the fast charging stations, the more people own this new car with its charging technology, the more valuable it is to own this car because the technology becomes more widespread. Does anyone know, is Tesla's charging technology proprietary? Do they prevent others from using their charging like standard?
Can I answer?
Sure.
As of right now, yes, but there's no it's just an adapter that's needed.
It's just an adapter.
Yeah. So as of right now, their software locks it as well, but I think in Norway they actually opened it up already, and they're in talks with different municipalities to open it up globally.
Right. So that's definitely a matter that can vary by country because of regulators, right? Regulators don't typically like people to be locked into one standard. They like people to have choices so you can have competition. So regulators could kind of easily say, you need to open this up. And I know that Tesla itself made some of its patents available for others to use. So, okay, cool. So let's maybe have one more comment, maybe another market penetration. Or yeah, Rahima.
Hello. So I went with market penetration because Tesla is a high-end company, and as we move to a more environmentally aware society, more people would want to move to electric cars. But if we go for market skimming, we're basically giving our competitors a chance to take over our potential customers because our prices would be too high initially. So that's why I chose market penetration.
So market penetration from the perspective of kind of keeping our competitors out.
Yep.
As long as we can. Okay, cool. Very good. I think that's another good justification for penetration pricing. So great. Not clear what Tesla should do. There's kind of strong arguments in both directions. Not clear what they're going to do, other than kind of what they've continued to do over the past few years. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on their stock price. So what new product strategies should you use? In general, if you're kind of deciding on this for your project, products that are bought only once are typically good for price skimming. If there's a substantial segment of consumers who perceive the product as special, like they have that high willingness to pay, and it's correlated with something like patience. And if you don't have much competition, at least right now, it's definitely more common. We do see the kind of aggressive penetration pricing in markets without competition as well. Like Amazon comes to mind. When they're the only game in town for shipping, they're still extremely cheap. And that's to try to keep competitors from entering. But it's definitely more common in markets without much competition. Versus penetration pricing, these typically tend to be products you can buy more than once. Maybe it's perceived as kind of nothing special, or it's kind of doesn't have these kind of segments of consumers who have very different willingnesses to pay. And it can be more common in markets with high competition, especially if you're trying to keep your competitors out. Okay. This in addition to kind of the cost and network effect reasons that we mentioned. All right. So that's dynamic pricing. Let's move on. Here's another company, Netflix. Here's some of their TV shows that they offer. And these are all kind of very different TV shows, right? So we have on the left, like a horror TV show, scary show. In the middle, we have a documentary show. And then on the right, we have a kind of family sci-fi show. So Netflix, when you subscribe to Netflix, you get all of these shows, you get all of these products together. Why doesn't Netflix segment? Why don't they give different products, different bundles to different consumers, like Netflix documentary, right? Maybe that's only $2.99 a month and you get all the documentaries. Netflix spooky, you get like all the horror movies and all the TV shows, and it's again like maybe $2.99 a month. So why doesn't Netflix do that? Why do they have everything all together in one massive bundle and you have to take everything or nothing? What do you guys think? Maybe prevent choice overload. Yeah, so if you can buy one thing that everything is there, that has value for sure. Maybe it's kind of simplistic, a simple approach. Keep out competition. Yeah, so if they were trying to do that, maybe they succeeded, maybe it would have been worse for them, but they definitely have a lot of competitors now. They license all content. No, they make, actually, I know they make a lot of their own TV shows now. So I'm not quite sure if that's what you mean by licensing the content. Prevents reduction of the market. So, you know, you might not have a prior, like, why, like, is one way of doing it better than the other? But if we think about like the demand curve style thing, wouldn't it be best if we could sell, you know, the scary shows just to the people who like scary shows, and then the sci-fi shows just to the people who like sci-fi shows, and basically try to get like the maximum willingness to pay from each of those groups? You know, because someone who doesn't like the scary shows, it adds nothing to their willingness to pay, right? So Isabella and Adrian say, yeah, maybe it increases usage and they might want to watch something new. It gives Netflix data for its own recommendation system. So potentially these are all good reasons. So there is a pricing reason why as well. So when Netflix sells all of its stuff together, this is called bundling. So all of their products, all their shows are bundled in one package. If you grew up with cable TV, you're also familiar with cable bundles, right? I spend $100 a month and I get a bunch of channels bundled together. I can't really pick and choose, right? So you kind of combine products and, you know, maybe say you're offering them at a discount. Now, what I'll argue is that bundling can be the most profitable thing to do in terms of pricing, right? So let's say we have two consumers, A and B, and we have two genres, comedy and sci-fi, right? So two kinds of TV show. And the consumers, they have different willingnesses to pay for each of these things, right? Consumer A, they clearly like comedy. They're willing to pay $5 a month for just comedy shows and only $2 a month for sci-fi shows, right? And so together their willingness to pay for the bundle would be $7, right? And just adding up 5 and 2. Consumer B is kind of the opposite. They don't like comedy, wouldn't be willing to pay much for that. Do like sci-fi, would be willing to pay more for that, $4. And so their willingness to pay for the bundle is $6 a month. So let's consider our different options. We could say we could have kind of two separate things, comedy channel and sci-fi channel, and sell them separately. And what would that look like? So if we sold the comedy channel on its own, let's say our marginal cost is 0, right? We've already made the content, delivering it is free. So let's say our marginal cost is 0. So what's our revenue? Well, if we kind of have our comedy channel, we'd want to sell that for $5. Why? Because the alternative is to sell it for $2 to both consumers. At $5, we get consumer A, and we get $5 a month. At $2, we get both A and B, but we'll only get $4 a month. So 5 is bigger than 4, so we just sell to consumer A, right? So if we are selling comedy separately, we're going to sell it for $5. And for sci-fi, it's kind of the opposite, right? So here I'm saying we're kind of selling it for, we could be selling it for $4. And in which case consumer B would be the only one who buys it. And we'd be making $4 a month, or we could sell it for $2, in which case both A and B would buy it, and we'd still be making $4. So it doesn't really matter which one we choose with sci-fi. We'll still be making $4, right? But at the end of the day, what have we made? We've made 5 plus 4, $9 in revenue. And that's the best we can do, right? We've segmented, we've targeted, we've figured out their willingness to pay, we've picked the right price. What about bundling? What's the best we can do if we sell as a bundle? So we can only choose one price. So what are the prices we consider? 6 or 7? Yeah, so $12 is what we can make from the bundle, because we're going to charge $6 for it, and then both A and B will buy. We could charge 7, but then only A would buy. So we charge 6 and both A and B buy, $12, 33% increase in revenue. Great, right? We've bundled and now we're making a lot more money. Maybe another kind of counterintuitive thing. Why are we making so much more by bundling compared to trying to like do all of the right things, segment, target, set specific prices? And is this general, or did I just cook the numbers? So you'll have to trust me that it's fairly general, that bundling is almost always more profitable. So Agent says it's general. So I'm interested to see why you think so. Please write in the chat where kind of your intuition comes from. In the meantime, I'll kind of discuss why it's almost always more profitable for companies selling multiple products to bundle together if you can't price discriminate. So what do I mean here? If we could sell to each consumer for exactly their willingness to pay. So for consumer A, if we could give them $5 comedy and $2 sci-fi, and if we could give $2 comedy and $4 sci-fi to B, that would obviously be the best thing to do. That extracts all of the value. So, but if we can't do that, then it's almost always better to bundle. Why is that the case? That's because for a bundle, mathematically, the demand curve is almost always going to be flatter. Okay. We saw that for the TV shows, for each individual consumer, the demand curves were kind of fairly steep, right? Willing to pay $5 for consumer A for sci-fi, or for comedy rather, but then only $2 for sci-fi, right? That's fairly steep. But for the bundle, consumer A is $7 and consumer B is $6, right? Barely any decrease at all, right? So with flatter demand, marginal revenue falls less quickly, because to gain sales, I only need to reduce price by a little bit. So I reduce price a little bit and I gain a lot more consumers. So I haven't lost that much on who I was selling to before, and I've gained a lot from the new people, right? So bundling leads to flatter demand curves. It leads to more homogeneous valuations. And that's going to lead to kind of marginal revenue falling less quickly. And so an ability to basically like charge one price and still be getting a lot of the value in the market, right? Why is the demand curve flatter? You can think that the bundle, what you're willing to pay for a bundle, it's the sum of a bunch of valuations of other stuff, right? And if you guys know from math, there's this thing called the law of large numbers. And as you add up numbers, kind of as you take averages, the averages kind of converge, right? So if I take many, many sample averages, those sample averages have quite a tight distribution, and they'll kind of fall around the same point. So when we look at all these bundle willingnesses to pay, we're taking sums, which are just averages without the 1/n, And so kind of these sums will all tend to fall in kind of a similar way. That's kind of the intuition. Perfect price discrimination beats bundling, but bundling beats most other kinds of price discrimination. Okay, Costco versus Sobies. So we've heard a little bit about Costco. So this is kind of a new topic. So we've now talked about price discrimination, talked about bundling, so pricing multiple products at once. Now Costco versus Sobies. Sobies, anyone can go in, but the prices are high. Different from Costco, right? You pay a membership fee to get access. And what that membership fee gives you is lower prices, lower per unit prices, right? The price of paper towels or salmon or pierogies or whatever it is lower at Costco per unit. What does Costco's pricing strategy called, where you have to pay a fee and then you get access? It's called a two-part tariff. So now we're on a type of pricing strategy where we charge basically like multiple prices for the same unit to the same person. It's kind of multi-part pricing. So two-part tariff is an entry fee plus a per unit fee. Now at Costco, you still have to pay for the groceries, but that's not always the case with a two-part tariff. Sometimes the per unit fee is zero, right? If you go to, say, Canada's Wonderland, you just pay an entry fee, and then you pay $0 to ride any of the rides. If you have a gym membership, you pay your monthly membership fee, and that grants you unlimited use of the gym, right? You don't pay per workout, right? So two-part tariffs kind of also cover membership pricing. So when might you want to do a two-part tariff? So people need to be able to stomach the upfront cost. So they need to have a little bit more money, a little bit more disposable income. Patience is typically good as well. Why? Because you may be stockpiling, like with Costco, or it might just be the case for patients that people are kind of willing to pay this big money up front and then only get the gains later on. So they need to kind of value the future. Like, hey, I'm losing all this money right now, but I'll make it back and then some in the future. So they need to value the future. So they need to be patient. And also higher usage rates, right? So if people, you expect them to use it quite a lot, then they're going to appreciate a two-part tariff. Cell phone service almost feels like a two-part tariff, right? We pay a membership fee every month. There's a little blast from the past, iPhone 3G. So we pay a membership fee, also called just like a subscription fee. But unless you have unlimited data, you're also going to pay for data, right? So you might get some amount of data with your package, but once you've used that up, now you have to pay per 100 megabytes or whatever. So we pay a fixed fee, we get the data that we are kind of paying for free, and then we start paying per unit. So almost like a two-part tariff, but it's got three parts now. There's an entry fee, and then there's a per unit fee up to a point, and then there's a higher per unit fee after that. So what's the logic here? Why a three-part tariff? In this case, you want to use it to discourage overconsumption, right? So you see these kind of bandwidth caps less and less, but back in the day, the network was not so good. Still not great, but it was quite bad. Could easily get congested, right? People who are using a ton of data are making the experience worse for everyone else by kind of congesting the throughput at the cell phone towers. So you want to discourage excessive use. So you use this three-part tariff to basically allow people to have kind of their ration of data and then charge more afterwards. Okay. So we kind of have these 4 different special pricing tactics. There's dynamic pricing, there's bundling, there's 2-part tariffs, and then there's 3-part tariffs. For your projects, it's not going to be the case. I don't expect you guys to use the economics tools to pick the price optimally. If you do run a survey and kind of get the elasticity, that's awesome. I encourage you to do it, but I don't expect it. When it comes to pricing, what I do kind of expect is for you to think carefully about these different kinds of pricing options, right? So we have price discrimination from before the break through sales and coupons and quantity discounts. And then we also have these different types of special pricing, right? So I'd expect you to kind of think carefully about which of these options is going to be appropriate for your target market. And when it comes to setting the actual price, probably rely on your competitors and kind of try to pick something that looks similar to them. All right. 2-sided pricing is going to be applicable for some of you because some of you are looking at platforms as your project. So what is a platform? Platform is a service that has to attract buyers and sellers, right? So think about Uber. Uber has to attract drivers who are kind of selling the service of a ride, and you need buyers, you need riders, right? So Uber itself doesn't hire the riders or the drivers. They kind of meet together on this platform. You kind of have more old examples of platforms like a shopping mall. Shopping mall needs tenants, they need stores, and they need shoppers, right? Shoppers won't come unless there are stores. Stores won't come unless they think there's going to be shoppers. So again, we have a platform that's trying to attract 2 sides of the market. Prices need to be set for both sides of the market in this case, right? So you need to set prices for both of these groups. Simple rule, you might want to do a lower, possibly 0, possibly negative price to the more price sensitive side, right? So if we think about a shopping mall, you don't pay to go in, but stores pay to be there, right? People are a little more sensitive than stores in that case, right? With Uber, it's kind of a little bit tricky because Uber takes its cut when you pay the driver, right? And it's not clear who are they taking it from. Are they taking it from you by kind of increasing the price that you pay, or are they taking it from the driver by kind of reducing the price that they pay? So kind of taking a percentage of the transaction price can be a good pricing strategy if you think that both sides might potentially be very sensitive. You might also have a negative price, right? So think about some game platforms like say Xbox, right? So Microsoft subsidizes the development costs for companies that want to release games on the console, right? So they kind of pay basically a negative price to use the console. They get support from Microsoft. Consumers pay a large price, right? So in that case, consumers are kind of the less price sensitive. The company thinks it makes more sense to try to get the games on the platform, make it as easy as possible. And then they figure buyers will come and they'll be willing to pay whatever Microsoft is willing to charge. Right? So that's 2-sided pricing. Till now, we've just been discussing basically this stage of the pricing process. This brown or this gray box representing a retail store selling to the final consumer, you and I. But at every stage in the supply chain, things are being bought and sold, right? So what about distributors, like selling to customers, right? So wholesalers selling to the retail stores. You know, what about manufacturing selling to the distributors, right? So the factory that makes the product selling to the wholesaler. How do they set their prices? So this is going to be an extremely brief, you could teach a whole course on this, and there are courses on this actually in negotiation. I'm not sure if there's any in the business minor yet, but maybe soon. So negotiating with your business partner, you don't face a demand curve. So you can't really use this sort of optimal pricing. You just face one partner, right? Your business partner, whoever you're dealing with. So the idea there is that businesses work together and they can create value together, right? I need your help to distribute my products. I can't do it without you, and you don't have a product to distribute without me. So when we come together, we kind of create value. So we need to figure out how to split that value, and that's how the price is set, right? 50-50 is a very, very common split of the pie, right? And you can think about 50-50 splits as being, hey, my costs have gone up, so I'm not just going to fully pass them on to you. I'm going to pass on 50%, and I'm going to expect you to eat the other 50%, right? If there's no mutually agreeable price, though, then what you get is your best alternative to negotiated agreement. That's called the BATNA, which is your partner's outside option. So the better your partner's outside option, if they don't agree with you, kind of where can they go? What's their second best option for creating value? The better the value proposition you have to make to get them to do business with you. So if they have a really good outside option, then you're not going to get a big split of the pie. You're going to get a smaller split of the pie. So when you're negotiating, the important things are you want to know your partner's best alternative to a negotiated offer, because you don't want to try to take more than they're willing to give. You should always reveal your alternative if it's credible, right? If you have a really good alternative, you should say it, right? It's only going to strengthen your bargaining position. And behavioral wise, people even in business still prefer what feels like a fair split, right? So 50-50. All right, so we're kind of coming to the end. One last topic on price matching. So price matching is a relatively recent phenomenon. Best Buy announced a price matching program in February 2013. What is price matching? Any price that you bring to Best Buy for the identical product, they'll match it or beat it, right? So they'll charge you the same amount as you found online or even reduce. Why would a firm do price matching? Well, you want to get people to buy your product who would otherwise buy elsewhere, right? If the product is still profitable for you to sell at that price, then it makes sense for you to do price matching. Are there any drawbacks for price matching? Why did it take Best Buy so long to do price matching? Good, so maybe people can fake it. Possibly doesn't maximize profits. So if there's people who would have bought it at the full price, but now are just going to buy it at the lower price, then yeah, that's definitely reducing your profits. Open your own store and set prices to $1. That's an interesting thought. I'd be interested to see if that works. Draw in customers to other products in the store, right? So again, that kind of like cross shopping. So price matching is selling products at a different price to a different segment. We can think about it using the tools we've learned. Some people pay a different price, right? And those people clearly have a lower willingness to pay, right? They're more price sensitive. But what else is different about them? Does everyone look up the price of competitors online? Probably not, right? It's a bit of a hassle. Just like couponing. So price matching is not for everyone. It's for a subset of consumers who are willing to search online for the best price. And then when they're in store, show that and ask Best Buy to beat it, right? So they have a low willingness to pay, but they're also like couponing style, right? They have the time to look around. So Best Buy introduces their price matching here. And they also used it to combat a phenomenon that they were really kind of suffering from. And the phenomenon is what's called showrooming. Okay. So Amazon has low prices, but you can't try out their products. Best Buy has high prices, but you can try out the products for free. You can just go to the store. So people go into Best Buy, look at which products they like the best, and then just buy it from Amazon for a lower price, right? So to combat that, they introduced price matching, but they only advertise it on their website, not in store. If you go in store, you'll never see a sign that says we match prices. Why? Because that's going to hit their profits, right? People who wouldn't know, who wouldn't think to look, they want to buy the products at the full price. People who are more savvy and who have the time to search for products, they want them to find the price match guarantee so that they still come into Best Buy and pay that lower willingness to pay. So showrooming and price matching is price discrimination, right? That's why they do it. And one thing we've kind of learned is that price discrimination, it's not a favor that the companies are doing to their consumers. It's a way of maximizing their profits, right? It's a way of basically trying to still charge a high price to a certain segment while getting a low price to the people with the low willingness to pay. All right, so here's kind of a fun little exercise. 2 different products, or rather two products that are the exact same, 2 Samsung microwaves. We have Lowe's and we have Home Depot. Now, both of them do price matching, and actually they go another step beyond. They price match for retail stores plus an additional 10% below. So when you kind of do your search, which store do you end up buying the microwave from? Lowe's, says Shuhui. How much? What's the price you pay? Yeah, so we actually end up going to the store that has the higher sticker price because their competitor has the lower price, but then Lowe's will beat it by 10%. Can you iterate? I doubt it. It's sticker price. Typically, it has to be a posted price that you're matching. It can't be kind of the promised price. Fuyo's just trying to get a deal. All right, so our progress report. So that's it for pricing. That's all I've got for you guys. So in the last 2 minutes, talked about this with everyone who's at a meeting so far. Those who still have a meeting tomorrow, you'll hear about this. Progress report is going to be due November 11th. It's 1 page, double spaced, so half the length of the proposal. And it's tailored to whatever we discussed during our meeting. So based on what we discussed, I kind of asked you to provide a particular kind of some stuff in the progress report. So just provide that to me. Okay, last thing. Presentations are coming up. I think in about a month, we'll have our first presentation. What's that going to look like? Here's one potential sort of breakdown of what time you should be spending on which components of the presentation. So you're going to want to motivate your product, basically like what's the product sector and what are the main needs? Basically like what's the problem that your product is solving, right? And you'll describe, a little bit about your target market at that point. What is the specific product? So then you're going to explain to me like, basically like how does it work? How does it provide those benefits? How does it solve that problem, right? Make sure we kind of understand exactly what the product is. Then you'll talk about the marketing situation, segmentation, targeting, positioning, basically how you segmented, why you chose the particular target market that you did, your perceptual positioning map. So how you serve that target market better than, any other competitor out there. If you did a SWOT analysis, maybe you're working on a firm that already exists, or maybe it's a new product, but either way, maybe you've done a SWOT and use that to help make decisions. You can show that there too. And then in the end, marketing strategy. So specifics about pricing and promotion and where you'll make it available. Okay, cool. Yeah, Mohammed.
So Professor, how are we going to be presenting this? Like, do you want PowerPoints and is our cameras going to be on?
Correct. Yeah. You guys are going to be presenting like during class on Zoom.
So you want PowerPoints for that?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Will you be penalized for going over the time limit? I'm going to cut you off at the time limit. So I'm going to like flash, 2 minutes, 1 minute. And once you're done, you're done. All right, cool. So if you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email or come to office hours next week. And otherwise, I'll see some of you tomorrow and some of you next week. So yeah, take care.